My brother tried to sabotage my wedding, but he found a secret that might break the family. I have always suspected my brother James to have a competitive side. However, I never imagined that he would sabotage my wedding plans. I always had the perception that he was the golden child, whereas I always managed to remain in his shadow. But when I got engaged to Erin, I decided that this time, James could not ruin it for me. Things started off with some slight mockery and some comments that were slightly aggressive, suggesting that Erin's ability to fulfill my needs was subpar. I initially realized that this was James being his usual self. However, things took drastic turns. If you are not subscribed to our channel, you may never see these episodes again. On the other hand, if you're subscribed, you can enjoy listening to them, which is what we hope you do the most. Of course, we all love having a good story to pass the time as well. The week immediately preceding the wedding, Erin got an unknown text that claimed I have been disloyal towards him. He decided to bring it up during nighttime one day, and his anger and suspicion was something I did not want to experience. To put it beautifully, my denial was violence that forms in strangling, and what is strangled is the certainty of trust, in this case, of who was doing the sabotage. Because, in fact, James has always been good at manipulating. He has extensive experience being a master. His deceit is crafted in such a manner that only the weak believe the facade. However, the truth is, I possess no evidence to prove it. If there ever was turmoil, things went to a totally different level when I found out that my wedding dress made by our grandmother mysteriously disappeared from the boutique. The store owner was adamant that it was picked up, but none of my family or friends had ever touched it. Erin's suit was lost the next after being dropped off at the dry cleaners. I went to drop off the rest of the clothes and found out that I no longer had any clothes left. I could tell that was all a setup, but kept quiet. My mother put the blame on luck. The rest of my family knew exactly how competitive James was and did not want to tip the scales, knowing how much rage he had within him, especially when there was a chance to show defeat against his little sister. James's dreams came true, and with the person he loved. I feared that his rage would eventually get directed towards Erin. But having tasted defeat so many times in life, I was not about to let this one go. The wedding will happen. On the eve of the rehearsal dinner, I heard James talking to someone on the phone and overheard parts of his conversation which frightened me. She doesn't know yet. When she finds out, it will destroy everything. Now, it was clear to me that James was deliberately being uncooperative, and for what reason? I could only speculate. There was something mentioned a lot during the call, and that was Dad. How could our father, who passed away 2 years ago, factor in? What secret was so horrible that it could shatter my entire life? I could no longer hold my tongue, so I approached James, feeling my heart race. What are you trying to achieve? I want to know what this is all about and what purpose it serves. With that smug grin of his, James always felt as if he was one step ahead. You'll find out soon enough, Liz, he said chillingly. But trust me, you won't like it. Before I could ask him anything else, he turned his back to me, which seemed to add to the weight of questions I felt floating around my head. My wedding was less than 2 days away, and all I could focus on was the mystery that James had chosen to hold over my head. What could be so horrible that he would rather sabotage my wedding just to keep it under wraps? Then it dawned on me. If James was talking about my father, then it surely had to do with my father's estate. Everything post his death had fallen into my mother's lap, but I always felt like there was something dark lurking underneath. Was James hiding something about the inheritance? Or worse yet, had my father lived a double life? What was I meant to believe? My brother was unervingly malicious, but this felt like it was deeper than that. It was painfully clear that whatever he was intending to do, it was not solely to ruin my wedding. It was much worse than that, and it was something that stood to tear our family apart forever. I couldn't go to sleep that night. I was fixated on how there were so many gaps in my memories of James and Dad's interactions. I had too many memories of my father's will to forget anything. Why did James try so hard to help Mom with the estate? Why did he become distant after Dad's death? The ticking clock made me realize that I was left with 3 options. Avoid the wedding and deal with the fallout at a later point, confront James with everything I had beforehand, or address him after the ceremony. What if the scandal James so carefully concealed was too severe? That was not my concern. All I wanted was the entire truth, and as far as I was concerned, the wedding could simply be delayed. I would confront my mother. If there was anyone who could have explanations for my worries, it would be her. But the moment I stepped into her house, her body language suggested otherwise. She looked shaky and nervous. Mom, what has been going on with James? I asked while trying to keep my voice calm. He has been acting weird, and I heard him saying something about Dad. For a second, her face became pale, and she ended up gripping on the tea cup in her hand just a bit too tightly. Elizabeth, you have to concentrate on your wedding. Whatever James is doing is simply sibling rivalry. He's always harbored jealousy towards you. Her excuse was far from convincing. I knew that there was no way something was right. Mom, please. This is not just about the wedding. James is keeping something from us, and I have a feeling it concerns Dad. After a long pause, she said something, her shoulders declining as if there was an internal burden weighing down on her. You are right, she finally admitted. There is something that you don't know. Something that I hoped would never have to see the light of the day. My heart started racing in my chest. I knew I was not prepared for all of this. What is it? It's regarding your father, her voice shaking. She continued. There was someone else? Jesus, of course she had to deliver this shocking of information. She truly has some nerve. What do you mean, someone else? Now, she could no longer bring herself to look me in the eyes. Your father had another family, Elizabeth. A woman, and then another child. I could feel the room literally spin around me as I struggled to grasp the information I just received. Another family? Another child? How long have they been at this? Does James know? That's what James has been hiding, she sobbed, blood weeping as her face crumpled further. He found out after your father died. The other woman reached out to him and informed him that her son was entitled to some of the inheritance. My stomach churned. And you are telling me you knew all this time? You never thought it best to tell me? I thought it was over, she said, completing breaking down. I thought we could try and keep it under wraps, but James, he has never been able to handle that. He has been trying to figure out a way to deal with it ever since. Now the pieces of the puzzle came together for me. The sabotage, the lies, James' loathing for Aaron. James didn't care about the wedding. He cared about the drowning secret, and now he wants to pull me down with him. But there was one more question burning in my mind. Who was this other family? That answer needed to be discovered. James would not be getting in my way this time. My chest was burdened by the weight of my mother's revelation. The man I had idolized my entire life had been living a lie. A second family. A secret brother. And James knew this entire time, harboring that bitterness inside him and quietly letting it tear him apart. But why now? Why go so far as to ruin my wedding? Was it jealousy or something more? Where are they? I asked, my voice straining with barely suppressed rage. Where's this so-called family? Mom hesitated, guilt flooding her expression. They live in the same city. The woman, her name is Linda. Her son is named Matthew. He's a little younger than you and James. Matthew. My father had a son and I never knew. I stormed out whilst ignoring Mom's calls for me to come back. My head was spinning with rage and betrayal, but one thing is clear. James cannot dictate this narrative. I need to speak to him before he decides to ruin my wedding. I sent Aaron a message, telling him that I needed some time alone before everything went down, and then headed directly to James' place. I was no longer concerned about the image I was trying to build. At the moment, the marriage was the last thing on my mind. He appeared smug, as though he knew what my visit was all about. And when he opened the door, that's how it looked to me. You spoke with Mom, huh? He closed his arms. I know everything, I snapped. Dad's other family, the betrayal, the yes. What in the world is wrong with you, James? Why could you not have just told me before trying to ruin my wedding instead? James' expression hardened. You would not get it. You have always had it the good way. The perfect little daughter that Dad wanted. The one who didn't have to struggle for his approval like I did. His words felt like cold water splashed on my face. Are you serious? This is not about Dad's approval. This is about you keeping a secret that impacts both of us. Suppose, why are you doing this? Because I don't trust you, James said cold. You do not deserve the truth. You do not deserve the inheritance. Why do you have to get half of everything when there is someone out there who needs it more? It took me a second to comprehend what he was saying. Matthew, you want Dad's estate to go to his? James' silence was all the confirmation I needed to understand. My chest started tightening as rage exploded underneath. Do you think Matthew deserves the inheritance more than me? After everything that's happened, the lies, the betrayal, you seem to favor the son he had behind our backs. James gaped at me, his expression full of rage. You don't understand, Liz. He never wanted any of it. Matthew grew up with no father, unlike you and I, who had everything. I'm trying to fix all of this, but you just want to ignore it like it never happened. I stood there completely unmoving. I expected jealousy or anger, but not violence. Definitely not this miscalculated justice of sorts. And you thought that my wedding is how you set things straight? I said with bitterness. James combed his fingers through his hair in irritation. I was not attempting to sabotage your wedding. Aaron is a great guy, and I didn't want him to be pulled into this situation. He deserves to find out what type of family he's planning to marry into. I shook my head in disbelief. So you send him texts with no context, create a scenario where I am the untruthful one, and get rid of my wedding dress? That's your way of protecting him? James didn't respond. He simply gazed at the ground, as though he was disappointed in himself, yet completely unwilling to confront that reality. I am not backing down, James, I stated. I am getting married at the end of the day, and I am not standing by while this secret ruins my life. If Matthew wishes to be part of our family, so be it. But I will not allow the mistakes from my father dictate my future. I thought for a brief second I might have seen something flash in James' eyes. Regret, perhaps. But just as quickly, it vanished. Feel free to do whatever you want, I told him with a sulking tone, devoid of enthusiasm. Just don't say that I didn't warn you. In the event that everything blows up in your face, I will not stand with you while you are bemoaning the situation. I exited his apartment feeling no more at ease than when I entered. The hidden truth came to light, but it had only escalated my problems. Now, I had to find a way to deal with the fact that my father had betrayed all of us and that my brother, in his misguided form of loyalty, had attempted to shatter everything. While headed back home, my phone vibrated. It was Aaron. We need to talk. I have something new that I need to discuss with you. My heart sank. Has James gotten to him already? I got to Aaron's place feeling soggy on the inside. I was anxious because I had no clue what James could have told him, and I was not ready for another shocker. Knowing Aaron, he rarely looks serious. But when he does, you know something is off. Sure enough, he was sitting on the couch looking far more serious than I have ever seen him. Now that I was so full of adrenaline, I could even feel my eyes twitch. So many thoughts were running through my mind, but I wanted to hear what he had to say without interrupting with my questions. Indeed, I received a phone call from a lawyer this morning. He spoke while staring at the ground. My pulse raced. A lawyer? Were they calling for you? Clearly not, because he seems very unhappy as he is nodding. Apparently, your father had some assets that no one knew about. The lawyer represents someone named Matthew. He's claiming an inheritance. My world tilted. Matthew. He was already making his move. Did you really think I was going to tell you? Even as I spoke, this was only a whisper. This is news to me too. All I know is that Matthew is a son your father has from another family. Aaron searched me as he asked, "Why have you not disclosed this to me before? This is important, Liz. How long have you held this?" I said, "A few hours," with a sigh. I was not exactly sure how I was going to put it in words or what it will mean for us at the end. Rubbing his temples, Aaron let out a sigh. Well, what am I to make of this? Will this be contested in court? Is he putting a marriage on ice? Absolutely not, was my immediate response. What's before us is very simple. Matthew may do whatever he desires with the inheritance, but he is not going to be affecting us. I've let James idiotically sideline me once, and I'm not about to let him do it again. Aaron's eyes were set on me for some time. What you do with the money means nothing to me, Liz. It is clear you just have to understand that I will be there for you, and we'll take care of everything. How do I ensure no more secrets are kept? I squeezed his hand, hoping he felt what I was saying. No more secrets, I promise. I thought my mind would ease after a few days, and I was completely right. This was the first glimmer of relief I had been searching for all along. Aaron wasn't going to leave me over this. We could still get married, and we would deal with whatever came after it together. But deep down, I knew this isn't over. James won't let go of the anger that easily, and I was Matthew's sudden involvement in our lives, so I have a feeling that will add to my problems too. The wedding is round the corner, and with it, a storm that I am not sure we are prepared for. The morning of my wedding should have been filled with joy, excitement, and nerves. Instead, it was a mix of all stress. The repercussions regarding my father's secret life revelations had me worked up, but I made sure that I don't allow it to get to me on the happiest day of my life. Just when I thought I was ready, my mom called. It was an unexpected surprise. "Elizabeth, something has happened. James, he is here and he is making a scene." It had to be James? I cannot. I hung up feeling a mix of dread and frustration. I had hoped he will stay away, but he clearly is not over trying to ruin my day. When I got to the venue, I saw that James was standing outside arguing with my mother and Aaron's parents. James was screaming to my mom that she is making a mistake and that she does not know the full truth when it comes to Matthew and Dad. He was very angry and his face was red. I strode toward him, my wedding gown expanding behind me like a storm cloud. "What the hell are you doing out here, James?" He swiveled to face me, his gaze frantic. You are about to make a grave error, Liz. You do not know everything. Matthew, he is mixed up in this more than you know. Do you think this is only about the multi-million-dollar will? It isn't. I clenched my jaw, holding my rage in check. I don't care, James. Whatever father has done, whatever Matthew wants, it's not my problem today. This is my wedding, and you're not going to spoil it. But James refused to relent. There is so much more that you don't know. You can't marry Aaron unless you uncover everything. I'm doing this for your own good. I was through with the mind games, the deceit, the mysteries. No, James, I said, my voice quavering with rage. You're doing this for yourself. You've been trying to manage this situation from the beginning, and I'm done with your crap. If you can't be there for me today, then leave. For a moment, I thought he might actually listen. But then in a tone so low I could hardly hear it, he said something which sent chills down my back. You'll regret this, Liz. You will be sorry for not listening to me. As he walked away, I remained standing, trembling from a concoction of rage and fear. A disruption-free ceremony took place and, for some strange reason, I was able to feel content. Listening to Aaron's smiles while he spoke kept me anchored to loved ones. I exchanged vows at the altar alongside Aaron and, for the first time in days, I felt a rush of peace. Everything in life ceased to matter. James, the secrets, even Matthew. I know too well that this peace will not last. The first dance of the reception, the heartwarming speeches, we made it all. Aaron's tears impacted me deeply while he made his moving speech. His words reminded me why I appreciated him. No matter how chaotic everything around us is, Aaron always manages to be my rock and provide comfort. Together, we are capable of handling anything. At least, that is what I used to believe. When I had thought the worst was behind, the dance floor started emptying. When I decided to look around, I noticed a man's face watching me intensely. I made attempts to scan the crowd, but to no avail. He is definitely not like one of us. This fellow featured extremely casual attire, as if they had given no thought to the event. His gaze sent shivers down my spine. Something about it felt terribly known. My heart dropped. Who is that? Aaron asked, straining his neck to get a glimpse of the man. I don't know, I whispered as I felt dread scratch against my spine, but I had a feeling I did know. This spelled trouble as I could hear the clock tick. James. I politely excused myself from the last remaining guests and strode straight across the room. My heart began to race more and more with every step as I began to shift closer. The man advanced towards me, his eyes almost hollow. Elizabeth, right? He said, his tone deep. My head began to shake as I was posed with another question. And you are? His eyes shifted with hesitation, and for a split second I anticipated him to turn around and leave. But with a squared stance, he met my gaze with his piercing stare. I'm Matthew. The world froze in time as I heard his words. The secret brother. The one my father had divorced and hid away from me. And now he was standing right here at my wedding. I figured you would just bail on me, which is why I didn't prepare myself mentally, I said while my thoughts were in a complete mess. So how did you find out about this? Intelligence is sometimes overrated, was all he had to say, like the answer was everything. I did think it was time for us to finally meet and well, I wanted to know how I would put this. I wanted a Keith in person. For what reasons? Was my immediate thought. What was this person expecting from me and the family? As Matthew stood in silence, he shifted uncomfortably, and from the look on his face, I could not tell whether he was furious or even slightly annoyed. However, he had this strange quality of alertness and caution around him that made me think he was carefully listening to everything we said. Why do people need to escalate their life in such a manner? Everything is perfectly fine, he finally said. I just really wanted to meet you. I know of your existence because you and James are pretty well known for reasons unknown to me, and if I'm entirely honest, it has seriously puzzled me. You should understand that I didn't run around wanting to know who Dad's secret lover is. His last line of words were inferring an accusatory statement, and if I'm being honest, those words surely did hurt. They hurt not because they were false, but because the truth behind it cut too deep. They felt too unsettling as it compelled me to remember the first time I came across the reality of the situation. How we all were laws in some sick, merciless system, led by a man who made a decision of leading a double-ended life. I don't know what to say, I said. A few days ago I found out about you, so I've been trying to process it. Matthew seemed to follow along. I understand. This is strange for all of us, but I believe that none of us should hate each other over something Dad did. We are, whether we choose to be or not, family. With those final words, I was stunned into silence. Family? Did that make sense? Or were we people turned against one another due to some unforeseen betrayal? Listen, Matthew said. I do not want anything from you. Not the inheritance, not your father's legacy. I don't want anything. I did not grow up with him, and I came to terms with that a long time ago. But I do think James, well, he is struggling more than you realize. James, I replied with wide eyes. Matthew nodded. For some time now, he's been in contact with me. I think he feels guilty. It's like he is stuck in between feeling loyal to you and your mom and wanting to get the chance to make things right with me. He is going about it all wrong. Those are words that I never thought I would hear. Matthew was listening to James vent for my whole life, and for some reason, had never came to me. This leads me to believe that he has been trying to clean this mess all by himself out of anger and guilt. I suddenly feel drained. I realize that I have been so mad at him and arguing on my life with him, but the truth is that he might have been trying to do the opposite of what I was blaming him for. I don't know how to proceed, was my answer, feeling exhausted by the gravity of the whole scenario. I am lost in all of this. I am not sure how to progress further from this point. Matthew presented me with a small smile which was sad. You know me, I am not sure either. The only way forward might be for all of us to discuss it, and I believe that is the only option we have. But it might be some time until that day arrives. Without doing so, this mystery will only destroy us. I remained there pondering in quietude at what he had to say. He is certainly correct. While my instinct tells me I would not want to have to face this uncomfortable truth, deep down I know I'd want to. It is bound to turn into a chronic problem, a blister that will rip our family apart from within. Thank you for coming, I said in a soft voice. Meeting you like this was rather unexpected, but actually, I am thankful you showed up. Matthew nodded, and for the first time, a glimpse of relief appeared in his eyes. Maybe we can have more conversations down the line when everything settles. I was not confident about what to expect, but agreed. To be honest, everything could be more wordy. My complication with James, my thoughts towards Dad, and now, the most difficult one, my connection with Matthew. In a rather odd way, I felt some form of closure watching him leave even though I knew the story wasn't finished. He doesn't seem too well, Aaron said while stroking my shoulder. He approached me and wrapped me in a hug. You okay? Yeah, I said. I think I will be. I leaned into him and felt the stress of the day rests on his shoulders. Standing with my husband, I could feel myself slowly relaxing. Although it was hard to admit, facing all those changes single-handedly was impossible. The ways my life had shifted was beyond anything I could have ever thought of. For the first time in days, I finally felt that sense of relief sparkle. We are always together. No matter what hardship is thrown at us, I know for a fact we can withstand it. The long road ahead. Epilogue. Bringing together James and Matthew was a task that took weeks to accomplish, and when I did, everything in between felt completely dormant. After having neglected my feelings for so long, there was a sense of volatility in the air. My relationship turbulence meant that all these years' worth of grudges were finally answered. But it didn't feel that way with the Namaste family. We discussed, actually discussed, and for the first time in what seemed like forever, we had the opportunity to silence ourselves. Matthew chose to forego the inheritance. He had a life to live and a future to focus on, and dragging the family into a legal mess was not something he was interested in. There was still James. He had a much harder time forgiving somebody. Letting go of the guilt that stemmed from keeping that secret for so long was no piece of cake, and rebuilding trust amongst each other would take quite a while. As for my father's legacy, his lies will forever taint it. But I learned one does not become a family because of the mistakes one person makes. It is about what choices we make from there on out. And while the journey would be grim and long, I was certain of one thing. I was not embarking on it by myself.